I have a question. Can you show again the connection editor? How do I know when to parent or constrain or make a connection in the editor or expression? Ooh. So the connection editor is under Windows General Editor's connection editor, right there. And basically it's a way to just connect two attributes together. So, for example, let's... Oh, this music is giving me serious like Betty Boop vibes. I used to grow up on that kind of music at my grandmother's house. She would always have like the old Betty Boop and Felix the Cat cartoons. She had a VHS collection of them, and my brother and I grew up with that. So for the connection editor, basically what you want to do is you want to load in an object on the left side. So I'm going to select this cone and hit reload left, and then something on the right side. And then you want to set how you want to connect it to and from. So in this case, I want to connect the left object. So from that, to the cube. And you can see the names down here. Or you can switch it. So now I'm connecting from the cube to the cone. And you can connect anything in here. So for example, I can connect maybe the visibility of the cone to the visibility of the cube. And there we go. So now what that means is you can see here, it's yellow. This means that there's a connection. If I turn the cone on and off, that links those together. So it's a very nice way of kind of connecting things, and it doesn't have to be like one to one, so visibility to visibility. For example, I could take the translate Y of the cone here and connect it to maybe the rotate X. So let's go in here, rotate X of the cube. So now as this cone goes up, the cube rotates. So it's basically a one-to-one connection. Now, with that, you can actually adjust that connection. So if I go into Window General Editor, or sorry, Window Node Editor, this will allow me to see connections in Maya. And I'm going to just graph out my cone here. Boop. And here we have our connection going from the cone into the cube. So let me delete the visibility one just so we simplify this. So we have our translate Y going into the rotate X. And we have a unit conversion node here. This is basically just making sure that Maya converts the numbers properly. So if I wanted to, I could adjust this by adding in some new math in here. So right now it's going one to one. So if I translate my translate Y to a value of 52, that rotate X is 52. But what if I want that rotation to be double as fast? So every time I move it up, it just spins twice as fast. I can right click on here and I'm going to create a node. I'm going to create a utility node, and let's create a multiply divide right there. So what I can do with this is let's take the output of the unit conversion, put it into the input of the multiply, input X, and I'm going to output into the so the output X into the rotate X, like so. Now actually, in terms of cleanliness, I'm actually going to put this before the unit conversion, or else, like you saw, I'm going to get another unit conversion. And the way you remember this, because it can be kind of tricky where you put them in, just look at the color of the lines. So if it's black, that means it's a converted number, which means that it would then have to reconvert. If it's green like this, I'll be able to add that in, output the X into the input, boop, and now we keep it clean. We're not converting numbers over and over. Okay, so for a multiply divide node, the way it works is you have input 1 and input 2. Input 1 is going to be the value of the translate y. Input 2 is whatever is going to be multiplied by. So if I want that to be 2, I can set that to 2 right there. And now, as I rotate this, this should now be rotating twice as much. So we have a value of 62 right there, 124. So it's rotating twice as much. Now, this is where we can really start getting fancy with things. Maybe I want this to take my translate y, multiply it by my translate x, and that will then become my rotate x here. And in this case, it's not going to do anything. There's no point. So I'm going to take my translate x and put it into my input 2 x value. So now my multiply is taking the translate y, multiplying it by the translate x, and then putting that into the cube. In this case, it's going to be absolutely useless. But what you can have is a piece of machinery where if you move one control, maybe one lever pulls, it'll set the gears in the machinery as you animate it. So you animate the character pulling the lever. The gears might start spinning faster, and then they pull another lever, and then it might change that machinery, and you get this kind of automatic movement based on what your character is interacting with. And it can make this really complex, or what seems like a really complex piece of machinery or animation, into just pull, and you're done. It all does it for you. Or for example, a car, if the tires have to move along with the speed of the vehicle, or like on different elements like that, you can do something like this. So for example, now, because my translate x is 0, translate y times 0 is going to be 0. But as soon as I move this over, so let's say we set this to 0.5, now we get a very slow rotation. If I set this to maybe 5, we get a really fast rotation. So we can start to adjust, and you can just build these node networks in Maya to really get some cool connections. So that is what makes the connection editor so handy. Now, expressions are similar, except expressions can go even further because you can literally write out code so that certain things happen only at certain times based on certain variables, and that can be really, really powerful. As animators, we don't usually have to worry about expressions. Connections, very rarely. I find them helpful for certain things, but in terms of animation, I don't use them all that often. So in terms of when do you use parenting, constraining, connections, or expressions, it really is just the complexity you need or the situation you need them for. So for example, let's get rid of this. So let's say we have parenting, constraining. I apologize for my handwriting. Constraints. Then we have connections. And this is why I love to write on the computer, because I always run out of space. And then we have expressions, which is code. So parenting, we use if we need something to follow but still animate. So in this case, it's to follow, but how to kind of simplify this. There we go. Parenting is how to say it, still, or they all connect things. So this is still animatable. So that's one of the big things with parenting. When we use parenting, it is still animatable. We can still animate the object that is constraint, or sorry, that's following. Constraints, we don't have that. But what we do have is on-off switch. We can turn it on and off. This is something that Connections does not have. They do not have on-off. They do not have ability to turn on that connection or off unless you really try to set something up in a complex way, but even then it wouldn't work. You just can't turn it off. Expressions, you can, in a sense, but there's no true on-off like constraints have. Connections are great for more complex connections. They're also good because they can connect things that are not base attributes. So for example, with constraints, you can only work with so it's only translates, rotates, and scale. That's it. Parenting, same thing. Translate, rotate, scale attributes. Attributes. Okay. So those two only connect those. Connections and expressions, it's everything. This is most complex. So expressions are the most complex. And they connect everything. And not just that, but they can connect things to time and to the way the Maya runs in the background even, which is fantastic. So, losing my voice. So, that's kind of the main thing. So this has no on off, no on off. Same thing here, no on off, and no on off. You can simulate an on-off switch, but it's not an actual on-off switch like constraints have. Constraints, though, the connected object is locked. Object is locked. So we can't move that object and do our own thing with it. Same thing with connections and expressions. If you connect an attribute, so for example, the rotate X here is connected. If I try to set a key on this, so let's try to set a key on everything. I can blend it. And actually, hey, that's new. Yes. Okay, so my world of possibilities has opened up. This was not available before. They added a blend unit conversion. So basically now I can animate the rotate X and blend it in. Oh, this is cool. I can blend it in with actual keyframes. Okay, cool. So this actually gives us an on-off switch. So yay, it actually has an on-off switch. Yes, yes. I love it. Okay. My brain is already starting to go over new things I can try out. I'll have to test that with expressions as well. So I'm going to erase that for now because I'm not sure if they updated that. But the thing with connections versus constraints is that they are a direct link. Whereas constraints are an extra object, an extra little node that gets created. So it gives you the ability to select and move that a little bit more easily. So to kind of summarize all of this, really The main thing that I recommend is parenting and constraining. These are usually for animation. Connections and expressions, along with parenting and constraints, these start to dive into, and let's actually go up here. This is for rigging. All of it. And really when and where you'll use them is whatever you feel is going to work best for that situation. And what's going to give you the results you need in a nice, clean way, and how you can merge them together. So I know it's not a specific answer, but it's really just kind of what you feel comfortable with. For me, I like connections. I'm not a fan of expressions personally, because expressions, unless you really know how to code, they can break, and then you have to go in and re-edit the code. I much prefer connections because it's a node editor and I can just drag and drop things to make the math work. Let's see. In Unity, I do all kinds of animations within the shaders for better performance. You can do that in Maya as well. And you can get some really cool effects in here. So if you go into the rendering editor, let's go into the Hypershade rendering editor. Go into the Hypershade. All of the nodes in here. So for example, when you create there we go. If I was to create, for example, and this is running really slow for some reason. There we go. I want to create a Lambert material. Create that. Well, all of this can be mathed out in all sorts of ways. So for example, the color could, instead of just being a basic color, could be, let's see, what kind of node can we play with here? What's a good one? It could be tied into, well, let's do this. Let's say the color of this material is going to be tied into the position of the cone. So I'm going to apply this Lambert onto the the cube here, and then I need to pull in my cone. So I'm going to do that by selecting it, selecting it, and then going to, where is it here? Can I just right click? I always forget the button to add. Add selected, yeah, this one right here. So I'm going to add that to my node editor, and it doesn't want to do that. Okay. If it doesn't want to do that, then what I can do is do it in my node editor. So this is where we can start having a little bit of fun. So I want my multiply node here to output the X right there. And I want to connect it. Oh boy, where's my Blinn? Or my Lambert? There we go. I want to connect that value out into the color right there. And it's going to go into the RGNB nodes. So what that means is as I move this, this is going to change the value of my cube. So as I move this, we can now change the color constructively right through there. Maybe I just wanted to affect the reds. So let's break those connections. Now it'll just go through shades of red. like that into the blue right here. So there we go. So you can do all sorts of things. Like this is a simple one connection. If you go all the way through and you add, for example, fractal maps. So if I add a 2D texture in here, maybe a fractal, and connect that into my color. But then the fractal map, I take my multiply node here and connect that into the maybe the amplitude right there. So let's take the output X and put it into my amplitude there. Turn on textures. Now, as I move this, we can actually change the amplitude of this. Now, the values are a little small, so let's bring this down. So this is going to be 1. So now, because I've got that multiply node, we get more control over this. Maybe 0.1. There we go. So as an object gets closer or further, you can start having effects happen. And like this is one example. You can build up a network that just as a character might like activate something on their suit. Maybe all the lights on the suit activate with it. You never know. You can do all sorts of things.